You all got the note from the confirmation from our digital friend. So, hi everybody, welcome once again to International Coaching Week. The four of us. Well, let me just, as we get ourselves started here, let me just give you a little bit of a tiny bit of backstory about where this morning's conversation, came from. We did an event like this 2 years ago for International Coaching Federation. For whatever reason, the calendar just didn't work out for last year's event. But we did an event like this 2 years ago. And at that time, we had been occasionally meeting in conversation for probably 2 years. And we realized in the course of those conversations that there is a global perspective to this conversation that is not always easy to access in the coaching world. An MCC from Europe, an MCC from India, an MCC from Australia, and an MCC from the U.S. That just about every corner of the world is engaged in the conversation, and all of us have worked in other parts of the world beyond where we live as well. So it has turned into an ongoing conversation, and I will tell you, just from my own perspective, and I'll say this in front of my friends here, even though I've said it before, that no other conversation that I'm in on a regular basis challenges me as much as this group. So we thought for International Coaching Week, let's lean on the international thing and let's see where the conversation can go in the course of all this. So welcome to Coaching with Impact, 4 elements to a deeper story: the client, their experience, their perspectives, and our presence. And we're gonna kind of be a little bit free form this morning, this afternoon, this evening, with the conversation, diving into those areas, and hopefully having an opportunity to take some of your questions, some of your comments. If at any time you've got something that's on your mind, you've got 2 options. You can throw them into the chat area. You can put your question out there and say, "Hey, we'll dive into this," or raise your hand. Turn your camera on, raise your hand, and we'll call on you. That's the beauty of we intentionally decided to do this as a meeting and not a webinar, so that you have the opportunity to join in the conversation. So please know that this will be better, even better, if you jump in and participate in this conversation. So let's get at it now. From the title, 4 elements to a deeper story, I think we need to first and foremost start out with, all right, when we lead with this idea of a deeper story, what does that mean? All right, Mel, you made the first sound, so you get to go first. You get to jump in on that. When a coach starts talking about the deeper story,
Wow.
what are we talking about?
Thanks, Jonathan. I'm thinking of the iceberg, right? So often when when I hear recordings, okay, this is me being the assessor, right? When I hear recordings sent to me, I'm like, how deep is this? Where is it on the iceberg? That's one of the questions I ask as the assessor. Right? It's like, are we still circling around up there, playing around up there? Or has the coach got that sensitivity to kind of listen at a deeper level, picked up certain things that the coachee was saying, and have that curiosity to go down any one of those different themes that are coming up? Or just go back to that agreement. You said this, so I will just focus on the agreement, right? I'll just be true to the agreement because it's important to be true to core competency number 3. Yeah. So that to me, that's what I'm getting right now, Jonathan.
I definitely relate. I definitely relate. This is actually something I learned from Karl. is that whole idea of what seems to want to happen in the conversation. You know, my father was a physicist. I studied engineering in college. Somehow I ended up in coaching. I like knowing what's going to happen. And boy, that is not helpful in coaching. You know, that, no, I take that back. That is not always helpful in coaching. You can certainly get yourself into trouble. You know, so I like that illustration of the iceberg, thinking, boy, if I'm floating up here and the thing that's going on for the client is down here, the likelihood that I'm going to see those particular pieces, not big. Not
Yeah.
big.
Very true.
Karl or VG, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I can go next. So I want to stay with the word impact for a bit.
Mm.
And I think, on this title, there are so many elements. There's coaching, there's story, there's depth. But I think I connect most with the word impact. I think good coaching, great coaching really has to be impactful. And you often, and Jonathan, and you can challenge me with the physics if you want, but I think from my high school physics that you can't create impact without depth. And I think that's where I would like us to go, or that's where I'm going with this, saying depth is actually a very important part of creating impact for clients. And I'm not talking about, an aha, and Mel, a great assessment, right? Or a great coaching conversation where coaches go, oh my God, this was an amazing demo. In fact, some of the best conversations hardly get any ahas, and everyone's like, seriously, this was that conversation. But I think the whole element of impact for clients, what sticks with them, what stays with them years after the engagement is concluded. To me, that also needs to really be at the heart of mastery. And if you remember, Jonathan, Karl, and Mel, and for everybody else here, as we were brainstorming, and let me let you into a little bit of backstage secret. It's very difficult to arrive at consensus with this, with this group. Not to say that we are polarized, but it's just hard saying what's the cut we want. So we started off with mastery, simple one, right? I mean, all of us are, MCCs, master coaches from different parts of the world. So mastery was the easiest team. And I think it was Jonathan who said, can we go beyond mastery? Let's think beyond. So that's when we said, what does this word mastery really mean to a client? Does a client even care? Do the 3 letters or any other credentials you may get from any other world bodies, does it even matter to the client? So how about we looked at mastery and what it can do from the client lens of impact? And so that's the way this topic kind of connected beautifully in my head. And, I'm super excited to see where we can go with this.
Love it. Love it. Okay, Karl, you get the last word.
What should I add after so much wisdom? Phew. Well, in order to provocate a little bit, I'm not so sure that we coaches should by all means try and make conversations deeper with our clients. I do believe that we have to inspire and challenge our clients to go and find profoundness and deepness themselves. To give you an example, I suppose most of us are familiar with the logical levels of Robert Dills, where you have purely operational behavior at the bottom and identity mission at the top. Well, it is not because as if you're coaching as someone with an MCD credential, that it must and should, by definition, always your responsibility to bring the client to identity. No, if the client desires, wishes, finds the need to go and explore his identity and mission and so on, they will go there themselves. Our responsibility is it to understand what the client needs, to follow the client in that wish, and to accompany, that's the word, to accompany the client when the client goes to those deeper levels. But I'm also an MCC assessor. What I do not expect from recordings that I say, here coach reached the identity level of the client. No.
Where is that on the iceberg, Karl?
What I do want to read in here is, coach followed the agenda of the client, and client apparently has the need to go and explore identity, so coach needs to accompany. So some conversations are indeed deep, but not all are deep, or not all have to be deep. It depends on your mastery in how to follow the client to where they want to go. That's coaching mastery in my perspective. Now, please disagree with me. That's what we're here for, huh?
You know, Karl, I don't think I can disagree with you, unfortunately. Karl and I have a long history of agreeing on nothing, you know, ending up at the same place, but taking very different routes to getting there. And I got nothing here, Karl, just to be honest with you. Now, other than to say, you know, MCC assessor, well, trained as an MCC assessor. I'm not in that world, but I do run 2 training schools that do a lot of assessing. And I will tell you 2 things. First of all, in the 2 schools that I run, you cannot pass the level 2 exam unless markers 5.1 and 5.2 are demonstrated conclusively. That's not an ICF standard, that's the school standard. 5.1 and 5.2 talk about the coach acting in response to the client. You know, that's those to me are the deal breakers because of what Karl said. And if you figure out how to act in response to the client, the likelihood of the client really getting what they want out of the session goes way up. Like, it becomes almost impossible to not deliver that if you're attuned that way. Now, here's the part I feel bad about saying, because I don't feel bad about saying that part at all. And so I will use you as my confession group right now, friends, brothers, sisters, global colleagues. I think coach training has done us a disservice in this area over the years. I was really close to my MCC before I realized that it didn't really matter that much if I did the traditional, predictable coaching things in my recording, as long as the client got what they were after. And I actually, you know, in a school I used to work with, in one of the environments I used to work with, I actually sent out a big mass emailing right before I left there, apologizing to every student we'd ever had, because we taught them to behave like a coach instead of being attuned to their client. And
Wow.
coach training, I think, sometimes doesn't help with this particular challenge. So, in honor of International Coaching Week, how about we all commit to really tuning into what the client is asking for? Last thing I'll say on this, I've been coaching 28 years. I have 13,000 hours of coaching. It's a lot. I've been doing the days since I got into coaching, the days I haven't coached are far outnumbered by the days I have coached. It's not even close. I have never once in all of those years had a client come to me and say, Jonathan, you know what I need? I need to be transformed, which is what we talk about in coach training. The clients, now you get there, you do get there, but I don't think we start there very often. Now, people come to us, I usually use a bad word when I say this, but I'm not going to do that this time. People come to us because stuff is on fire. And as we put the fire out, we gain permission to help them transform themselves. So I'm stepping down off my soapbox now, but I appreciate that that Karl opened this door to paying attention to, hey, what actually does your client really want in this setting? Mel or VG, any final thoughts on this before we move into?
Not so much final thoughts, but I just thought we'd tap into the wisdom of this very international and committed coach group here. And I'm kind of going with an assumption that all of you are working with clients in your coaching practice. When clients do hire you or they inquire, what do they bring by and large to the table? And I'm not really talking about specific themes or the like, but really based on what Jonathan said and like Karl said, right? Are they really here at identity, or are they here at operational fires to be put out, or somewhere in between? Please use the chat box or just unmute yourself if you'd like.
I can tell you flat out, it's almost always, the presenting symptom for me is almost always an operational question. That is, going back to Mel's iceberg, I love the fact that our Australian Malaysian friend is using iceberg illustrations, by the way. That just amuses me. The going back to that iceberg though, the operational challenge is very often undergirded by something at the identity level. But whether or not they actually want to work on that is a different question. And B, whether or not they want to work on it with me is another question as well. Because evidently I'm a little scary in some cases. I've actually had clients say that to me. Boy, you're so enthusiastic. You're very upbeat about. Karl says I have an American enthusiasm. You see potential in me that I don't even see in myself, which is typically the case. And that unnerves some coaches. So
yeah, I can see in the chat box. Sorry, go ahead, Mel.
No. I just wanted to say that someone wants to read any of those lovely comments. Thank you. Vijay, you wanna have a go?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm just seeing a theme run across saying it's usually operational, and I think the final comment from Jayanta is also about bringing in the sponsor. Now, I think bringing in the sponsor, the happy third, into the equation also makes it even more interesting. So yeah, Wendy, you want to jump in?
Thanks. I agree with everything I'm reading in the chat. But one thing that after I listen to their story, which is usually the tip of the iceberg, and then I, maybe like recreate or paraphrase, whatever you want to call it. The first thing that usually makes me feel like I'm on track is when they say, oh my gosh, I'm not crazy. You actually understood what I said. Like, I can't even, try and articulate it in words. And that's why they're kind of all over the place. So I think people just really want someone to hear them out and, make them feel like they're not crazy. That's usually the response that I get, that I feel maybe I'm on the right track. Yeah. Thanks.
And Wendy, I can attest to it. You're a beautiful person to talk to, right? So, they just want your love and care too. Oh, beautiful.
And the other interesting dimension here is many times it's also problems or issues or topics that they have done well in the past. So it's not as if it's something new and different. And yet they want somebody else to to help figure it out. And like Jonathan said, so that makes me wonder. I know nothing about this. Well, almost nothing, especially when it's very much an industry context or a specific context. So how do you then even be able to come in as that equal partner is something I ask myself often. And what does it take? What is it that they are not able to access within themselves at that point of time? And how is it that, me as a professional can enable that access? Am I making sense?
Makes total sense. Now this comes back to me about where do you prefer to coach? This is a little bit about the coach, I think. I would rather coach in a situation where I know nothing about the subject matter that the client is bringing. I find I ask better questions then. Now, not everybody likes that though. So what do you prefer? Knowing a little bit, knowing a lot, knowing not
Nothing.
much?
Jonathan, it's a true honor to disagree with you. Let us enjoy the pleasure of disagreement like we do it in most cases.
I would love to tell you, for those of you that are attending, I would love to tell you you're seeing a special moment right now, Karl and me disagreeing, but you're not. This is a day that ends in Y.
Well, let me give you an example. I've before becoming independent coach, I was for a few years HR director in one of the big four consultancy firms, and having gone through the experience of being a part of such a big four environment myself, tremendously, significantly helps me in, first of all, and truly understanding the context in which my future clients in those environments work. They help me in very fastly showing and feeling empathy for their context, both rational and emotional empathy. And that tremendous helps me in asking let's say, the most powerful questions already at the beginning of a coaching journey, because I must not assume that my experience in the Big Four mirrors their experience in the Big Four, but certainly a part of the questions that I've been asking myself while working there for 4 years, a part of those questions will relate somehow to their world and to their context in their working environment. So when it comes to truly understanding, showing empathy, feeling empathy, rational, emotional, and finding the most powerful questions already at the beginning of a coaching session helps me. And if I transfer that experience now to another industry, for instance, hospitals, the medical industry, in one hospital, you have 20 doctors, all egos, thinking they are all themselves the CEO. Every hospital has as many CEOs as there are doctors. Well, it's the same world as the Big Four. All partners think they are the CEO. So it helps knowing something about the business, knowing something about the context, the culture, and the industry. For me, at least, it does.
Well, I'm glad to see you recognize your limits, Karl. No. I actually think I think you're making a really important point, though. Let's not miss this, because to me there is an incredible skill, and this is one of the things that I think separates excellent coaches from very good ones. There's an incredible skill in taking your experience and learning how to translate that into better questions. Because to me, that's the secret. Is Karl takes his Big Four experience and uses that to ask the best questions he can come up with, and to invite the client into deep reflection and some of those kinds of things. I think we just found next year's ICW session is to dive into that. You know, that to me is an incredible skill.
So before we go off, let me anchor us back into the story.
Yep.
And maybe Mel can tell us a little bit about, what are these 4 elements that, or maybe there are 5, maybe there are 6, who knows? But, is there something to the 4 elements, Mel?
Yeah, I think that the thanks, Vijay. You've also put me on the spot here. I was thinking,
You can pass it on to Jonathan.
I was actually thinking about agreeing some parts with Karl, and then you throw me this spin, and I love it, right? Because my memory is like Nemo these days. So I think Jonathan can bring that connection to the 4 areas, but I like to add on with one thought, which I think our minds, and I'll speak for myself, my mind often wants to look at the differences and get a bit edgy about it, right? It's like, oh my gosh, this person is this tall, and this person has this big team, and this person has this, and I've only experienced this, and I'm only like this, and I'm versus looking at the similarities. And I think the similarities actually hold some of the keys for us to understand how much do we get involved in a session, right? The similarities are already there to help equate certain, I guess, certain disparity that we may be feeling as coaches. And first and foremost, we're all faced challenges. Then we've all had bad days. We've all gone through, as Jonathan didn't want to say the word, but we've gone the opposite of the good days. Let me just say it, shitty days. We've had shitty days.
That's the word I was going to use.
That's the word, John. I just say it out because we're no holds barred tonight, this morning for you. And the moment that we can put our that differences apart and put it down, the easier it is to understand of what our role is. And to me, one of the things that I often say is, how good a mirror holder am I going to be in this conversation? I constantly tell myself, how good a mirror holder am I going to be today? Because sometimes I'm not, because I'll pop up my head and say, I got you there. We've got that. We've got this in common. We've got this differences and wants to do the comparison. And I think that's the danger when we start either doing this, both sides, the similar and the difference, and that becomes a distraction for what and who we're called to be. I'll stop at that.
Yeah, the mirror is dangerous, I think. Well, for me it is. This is my ADHD speaking. The mirror is dangerous because I want to look in at my own self. I want to go on the same journey that my client's going on, and I have to constantly remind myself that I am not the one on the journey. I'm along on the journey. You know, I get a desire to look in the mirror, and I'm like, oh man, my hair looks good, and then it's all about me, and that is so not helpful for clients. That is so not why they come to us, right? So let's tie this into these 4 essences from the session description. We're naming a really crystal clear problem for clients, but what are those practical ways to keep the client's agenda front and center? How do we do that? Mel, you were just on the spot, so I'm going to put Vijay on the spot here now. How do you do that? How do you keep the client and what they want front and center in those coaching conversations?
I'll jump in after Vijay.
Okay.
But
You can jump in before me as well, Karl. Go for it. I'm not ducking the question, by the way.
well, there is the very, very rigid ICF way to do that. And there is also a very human, spontaneous way to do that. The very ICF way, and that is what you notice in recordings all the time, is about halfway the session saying, "Dear client, wow, we're about halfway. Where are you now, huh? Compared to where you started? How productive has this journey been so far? When you look back at your objectives of half an hour ago, what has happened?" That's what I call I want my MCC recording kind of process control. Yeah? Now, you also have other ways of checking in with the client, how they're doing, if the work that you're doing together relates to what they desire, relates to their agenda. And that goes in a much more smoother way. To give an example. I hear you mention that word a lot. For example, work-life balance. I hear you use that word a lot the last 5 minutes. What's the relation between that word and where we started? It seems to be new, but I'm not entirely sure. Wow. So you actually bring together different aspects. You show curiosity for something new that the client has brought in, willingness to explore that, and at the same time, trying to understand how is that word that you're helping us, that you're bringing in, how is it helping us this session? Because maybe, and there are also two ways to do it, you need to recontract. Apparently, client wants to explore something else, and we have the ICF way. Okay, dear client, it is my understanding that you want to explore something else. Is that correct? Yes, coach. Okay, where do you want to be at the end of this session with that new topic? That's the ICF way for your MCC recording. A more human way is, okay, well, it could be interesting to explore that. Of course, if that is what fits in your agenda, dear client. Yeah, indeed. Okay, and where do you want to go with that? Much more spontaneous, much more smoother. But these both dimensions answer, I think, Jonathan's question. And now Vijay is going to add.
No. We can't let this pass by. We can't let this pass by because Karl leads the MCC assessor team. And he just gave us a cheat code. If you're studying for your MCC recording, he just gave you a cheat code for one of the things they listen for. Now, I'm not saying it's a guarantee, but that moment of, hey, in the middle, how are you feeling, dear client? And he does actually call his clients dear client, by the way.
Fine.
Yeah. He keeping that focus and then acting in response. As an MCC assessor, that's a critical skill to be able to navigate. I don't want to miss that because that's so important. Now, the second thing I'm going to throw, this is a personal thought, and then I'll be quiet and VG, you can run with, is that midpoint. That's the only time in the coaching session I use the word we. Because I find at the midpoint, after they've been working, they're sometimes exposed. They're feeling exposed. And I want to communicate that, hey, you are doing the hard work here and I am with you. So I intentionally will say, how are we doing on this at that moment? For the subtle but intended impact of communicating to my client, I'm here with you. I think that moment matters. So, VG, how about you?
I just love the way both of you, while we never hoped that this would be like a recording tip session,
Right,
I think
right.
you have given something very valuable. And I think it's good for every coach to, irrespective of where you are in your journey, to go back to their basics and be in touch with some of these things. That being said, I definitely don't want to resubmit a recording for Karl to assess. So I'm glad I'm done with that part. But anyway, that aside. So I want to go zoom out a little bit on this one, right? Let's kind of keep away from the session. There's a client, there's a coach, let's assume two humans at this point of time, and coming together to solve for something or to work towards something. There's an outcome that, without an outcome, I don't think two people, somebody's going to hire a coach. I think, and I don't know, and don't want to attribute this to any competency model or, any approach. But oftentimes what happens is that I think we coaches take ourselves way too seriously. So without our realizing, we get a little bit into the driver's seat. Yeah, we're doing all the conventional things, right? We don't talk very much. We give more questions, lesser solutioning perspectives. But still, in interesting ways, we get into the driver's seat. Or at least we're not fully willing to let go of that seat. And I'll explain this a little bit more, right? So we feel we want to bring in a little bit of structuring, a process and everything. But by doing that, I think there's a disservice that happens, which is that you are not sort of starting with the client. And what do I mean by that? Every client, even in their most unresourceful state, most confused and most, if I may use a strong word, broken state, has two things that they always will have. One is their experience. And the other one is, I think, the way they look at life, perspective, meaning making. And irrespective of how overwhelmed they are, I think it's important to start here, even before you bring in whatever you want to bring in terms of powerful questions or great listening or just your coaching presence. So I would just advocate to say, how do we put the client, really the hero of this whole thing and up and center, is by, I think, valuing these two things we tend to neglect because we see them quite unresourceful. We see them helpless. There is a bit of struggle that they're going through. So we automatically assume that, they are not in touch with their experience or perspectives. They have it. It's not going anywhere. So I think great coaching is about putting them back in touch with that, or at least using that to enable that movement forward. And when we do that, I think even if, other things, conventional competencies for a coach, if you don't score a great marking on that, the client will be fine and they will get value from the session. So great session value or program value is not at all about the coach, but about facilitating the client to be back in touch with themselves.
So out of curiosity, for lack of a better, I'm gonna use a very clumsy description here, and I apologize in advance for this. Do you have a default lens in your mind about when you start a session? Do you walk in assuming the client has reasonable self-understanding and self-regard? Are you really able to be completely open-minded about, okay, the client will show me? What do you bring? What do you bring with you, Vijay, in that lens, walking into the session?
You used the word beautifully, Jonathan, clumsiness, right? What I bring with me is tremendous amounts of patience to just allow for the clumsiness to unfold. And I wouldn't say I was always like this, right? I mean, today I'm willing to wait 2-3 sessions for that getting in touch to happen. I know we spoke about showing the mirror, but I'm saying that the client doesn't even have to see the mirror. They just have to be in touch with themselves, in that very non-judging space. And I allow, or let me not use it. I think the word allow is judgmental, right? I mean, it brings me into the center, but I try to create a space of that self-acceptance. It starts there, right? But if I were to get into contracting too soon or getting into anything else too soon, I lose that. Then automatically, even though you don't want to get into the driver's seat, you're pulled into the driver's seat. And we're both struggling. The fact is, most clients, or at least let's assume they know how to drive. They just may be out of touch. So I think it's also about a lot getting out of the way. So I do that. So if I were to say the one competency I think I have held dear and work very hard at to develop as years go by, and hopefully with a lot more gray hair and wisdom, it is patience.
Very tempting to be in a hurry to get some particular outcome, isn't it? Very tempting.
Yeah, it is, especially, and somebody talked about sponsor, right? If you have a sponsor who is at the end of session 2, really wanting for you to give them some hint that, oh my God, we made the best decision by hiring, this highly regarded coach for our CXO. I'm sorry, I can't give that validation because I don't know. So it also takes off a lot of pressure from me. But yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy at all in sponsored engagements. Because the patience that you invest in upfront, right? At least in the early parts, I'm not saying you don't need to be patient later, pays crazy dividends. Because then when they get into the track running, you have to run really fast to catch up with them. And I've seen this, I mean, in more than one engagement.
Yeah, for sure. Mel or Karl, what's your best guidance for keeping the client's agenda front and center?
Hey, Jonathan, Vijay, I would like to share something with my experience, because as what Vijay just shared, from a client's perspective, as we go in and initial sessions, it's very easy from a client to easy for them to bring the memories of their past stories, and where that can be a footing for both of us, the coach and the client, to get into the difficult part where that the client, it's difficult to imagine the solution or the future for the client. So in that space, I think, as Vijay said, the patience as well as the so-called coaching space that we create, the intentionality of us as coaches to give that space helps both to come to a kind of a dance. So yeah, so sometimes it may not happen in the first 2 sessions even. It all depends with the competencies that we that mastered over time, as well as the the coachability of the client sometimes. Some clients, they are ready to kind of open up fast, and some, they find a lot of resistance with whatever the state that they are in. So yeah, this is a little bit of thoughts from me. Back to you.
Appreciate that.
Can I jump in on?
Please.
Yanta? Yanta, I think that's the right way of spelling
You
it.
can call me Jay.
Jay, okay. We have a Vijay and we have a J. Yeah, it's excellent abbreviations. What you share with us brings something to me, which is called trust the process. When the coaching conversation gets difficult from time to time, meaning you keep on asking questions of which you think yourself, these are pretty powerful questions. Unfortunately, the client is not giving back a lot, remains silent, gives rather short answers, and actually he seems to be looking at you to do all the work, and after a certain while you start also looking at yourself to do all the work, and that is not at all a healthy situation from a coaching perspective. So in order to combine a few questions, how do we keep the client's agenda and the client in the middle of the center? Well, it may come as a shock, but by not keeping the client in the center, but by keeping the process in the center, by keeping trust and faith and confidence in the process between the client and you, even if that goes a little bit difficult now and then. And by keep on trusting in your own coaching presence. The more powerful your presence become, the more you will be capable of what I would call creating and maintaining an energy field between you in that client. And that's where you mentioned the co-creative dance. Well, that dance happens in that energy field. And even if there are long silences, even if you see that, client has a hard time in answering, we are often better to simply name that situation. I get the impression that this is difficult for you. I get the impression that my questions do not resonate. Is that a correct impression? That is much better, I think, than start working very hard and keep on creating questions and questions and questions, knowing that the other side has a hard time in answering them. So trusting the process is my best proposition here. Thank you.
Love that. Love that. Thanks. Thanks, Mel or Karl. Mel, I'm all caught up in the energy field all of a sudden. Mel, what about your guidance?
Like what Karl said earlier, like there's so much, right? So much that we're sharing tonight. What came to me before was being true to what the client really wants. And it's a hard one because when you ask them, what do you want? What do you want to achieve? Or what do you want to look at? What is the focus? And often, again, I come back to the iceberg. They often would say things up here. And if we're quick to grab it and run with it, that's when we're not going to put it in its right space. I often don't get excited when the client gets it so fast. So that's my tip. When it gets too fast, that means it's coming from here, and it's just like, is this the right thing to say to my coach? You know, I have a feeling that we've built sometimes such a good relationship with our clients that I feel like they want to impress us sometimes. I don't know anyone gets this or not. It's like, oh, am I saying the right thing, Mel? You know, so the more I'll try to slap myself out of the way. It's like, get out, Mel. I think now they're trying to impress you. What have you done? And the more I can stop thinking about what I've done or what potential, and more of just holding the mirror back to them and say, where do you really want to go in this? And honor that. And you know what? Sometimes they would test us. They would come back and like, you sure we're not going to just talk about this? Because this is part of my 3 objectives. We want to talk about, remember, the overall coaching plan? We all know that, right? But if you show the interest about the person, and I'm tying with the points that we were saying, that humanity, what VG is saying, interested in that humanity of what they really want, and they would want to be that true self that will come out. And if you allow that space for that true self to come out, instead of just grabbing what they're saying up front, then we're allowing them to come out little bit by little bit, because it's going to take a while. They're testing that boundaries, right? They're testing, can I say this? Can I say this? Can I really say this? Oh, and when we respond again, slower, again, it's just repeating what everyone else has already said. Having the patience to not jump in so fast. I think they'll come out even a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more, and they'll get used to that new space, isn't it? They have to get used to that new space, and which means that the space to explore a little bit more that is not conventional, that they've always done that with us. That's my piece. Yeah.
I always have this mental picture of when you go to a store to buy clothing. You step into the dressing room and you know that you like the thing you brought from the rack that you took to the room to try it on, but it's not your favorite yet. If you're walking out of the store and you've got a new favorite shirt, I'm going to suggest in a week or two, it's not going to be your favorite anymore. But if you walk out of the dressing room and you go pay for the new shirt and you're feeling confident, you know what? I like how I look in this shirt. Or that's kind of the road we want to be on with all of this. Is it's not your favorite in the dressing room. It's not your new favorite when you're standing there in the dressing room. But after you get it home and you see how well this new shirt goes with these 2 pairs of pants you've got, or you think, you know what, I'm realizing that this is going to be the perfect thing to wear to this particular event. That's kind of where we're metaphorically speaking, that's kind of what we're after, I think, to all of this. So for the 3 of you now, because I've heard this patience theme run through all of your comments, and I just recently learned to spell patience, so I'm getting better at this. But I'm curious how you learned that idea. How did you develop that ability in coaching? Go ahead, VG. I see the wheels turning.
Things clicking in my head, huh?
Yep.
I got
Oh, that's
thought,
great.
Vijay, just linking with Mel, what
Yeah.
and Jonathan said. So what I found is in coming into a kind of proper agreement and to understand, client to understand what exactly the client wants in the sessions, isn't a single decision for them. So in our patients or the kind of inquiry that there are many micro decisions shifting, and then they are coming into a kind of deeper understanding of what they want. So I could say it's a portfolio of decisions as what exactly that the client wants. So in that space, what we are discussing, like, okay, it can be patience, it can be creating that space, it can be that chemistry that we have as a coach and a client, a rhythm. So all that is going to help. So yeah, so it needs a little bit of time, and also to respect each other as individuals as well. So back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Jayant. I think you've brought in different dimensions. So I am going to take a stab at that, Jonathan. But before that, I want to go back to what Mel said, if you don't mind, just a few steps back. You know, these clients who seem to have absolute clarity before they walk into a session, right? I mean, I've had some of them who would even say, okay, in session 1, we do this, in session 2, we do this, and, you know, give me a session-wise breakdown. And I've had to very gently say, I'm not consulting for you. But, you know, I mean, some of it is also experiential, you know, and if they want that structure, yeah, we can put down something. And very soon to realize that they would realize that in 60 minutes, it's very, very rare to find anybody following that structure. So I, you know, in my practice, I have a bit of an intake sort of, well, it's not a form, but, you know, it's a little bit of a reflective space that I get them into. And there is this one question on goals. And the more clear clients are, we're able to bullet it down 1 to 5. And very, very precisely, you know, I mean, I've had people actually say, I want to have more discipline at work. Okay. Now, this is as narrow as it can be. And I get a little concerned about this because then there is that expectation that we are going to look and work on one theme, one behavior in a very narrow one aspect of your life. So, you know, when we talk about this whole thing about client experience, the earlier question, it's also about connecting them to different parts of their own life experience, right? I mean, each of us has a different story. There's a story at work. There's a story as a coach. There's a story with our relationships. There's a story with childhood, with our friends. And I think the greatest thing about coaching is enabling you to connect those dots. It's really difficult for you to, for example, be a tremendously patient parent and the same patient's not showing up at work or with your clients. Yeah, it's there in you. It is a superpower. But there are some environments, some contexts that kind of limit you. And I think the work together is to understand those contexts, clear those cobwebs, and put you in touch with your own superpowers or your own capacity. Yeah. So the more clients are less clear about what they want, it becomes a lot easier to make these connections. So, I mean, I couldn't help saying that. Thank you, Mel. I think you brought out a very important point. So to my colleagues here, coaches, it's okay if, you don't have so much of clarity as you sign off or, to put down in the contract or, I think broadly, directionally, if and there is an agreement, I think it's good. I think it's very good to begin your work together. And as you realize, you will be able to narrow it down and pick up the most important themes, make those choices. Obviously, a coaching program is not going to resolve, everything, in a person's life journey. You're going to make those choices. So Mel, thank you for, reconnecting with that. Coming back to patience. I know I said that, Jonathan, and it wasn't easy, really. I won't say my very first coaching sessions, people would call me a patient coach, etc. But I think I want to connect this back into the whole concept of being human, which we've spoken about, and I've spoken about in our probably last 2 sessions as well. I think when you recognize that here is a person who is genuinely trying, otherwise they're not even going to come for this program, unless, of course, it's a heavily sponsored program and they were forced to go, in which case you shouldn't be going ahead with the engagement at all. But let's assume somebody is there and come there. They want to make this work. Yeah. So it's like a relationship you've come in, with your own volition. So you want to make it work. So I think it's really important for any relationship to give it that time, to give it that space. I think it's recognizing that. And you also need to earn the right to go into the, I spoke about depth earlier, the deepest parts of that client's journey. It's not something that's granted to you because you're a credential coach, you're a master coach, you're an experienced coach. No. Yeah, it's not even granted to you because they're paying you the money and you're offering services. You need to earn that. So I think that's the concept of patience. And, I always ask myself, would I just sort of, a stranger comes and whoever he is, right, or she is, the stranger, am I going to pour my life out to a stranger? What are the things that I need? What are the assurances that I need? What is the safety that I need? And more than anything else, I need a patient human being. So I think it's a little bit also about keeping, to put myself in the shoes of the client often, every time, especially when I see behaviors or responses that are not necessarily very encouraging. So a client turning up late for a session, there are 2 ways to look at it. One is to say, oh, this client's very unprofessional, indisciplined, don't understand my value, does not respect me. I can add on 10 more reasons. The other very human way to look at it will be to say, maybe something happened. Maybe someone fell ill. Maybe there was a boss who was acting really difficult. Something else happened. So the difference, however, is not to accept and say, that's fine, it works. Yeah, because then that's not honoring me and valuing me. But it's about that dialogue and to bring that up and to be patient in understanding that. Now, if there are realities that you need to work around, and it's going to take them a while to work around that, I don't mind waiting. And I realized in my waiting, it's actually building something far deeper because you are also working on certain behaviors that the client himself was not aware of. So that to me is patience, to be able to view that person as a human being with a real life, a real relationship, a real job, real pressures, choices. And to say, okay, sometimes, stuff happens. And sometimes it happens to me too. So how harsh do you want to be about it? And you guys know me. I'm not the one to lower my standards. And you know, I can be quite demanding. So it's not about letting go or saying that, okay, anything works, but about truly, you cannot work with your client unless you truly understand the world and the challenges that they're working with. Yeah, so I think that would be my rather long answer to a short question.
Good though. Karl, how about you?
Yeah, related to the word patience, I would like to bring in a notion related to time. Now, I'm not going to jump into physics or quantum physics, because then my son is going to call me an idiot. He's a specialist in that, not me. But I want to share with you an experience, and maybe when it comes to patience and time and stuff like that. I have already experienced, both from coach and from client perspective, so me being coached, that a session that took about half an hour, something like that, seemed to have taken an hour or 2 hours or even longer. So the subjective experience of time passing by during the session compared to the real time passing by, wow, there seemed to be experienced a long, huge difference. In some coaching sessions, and again, both from coach and client perspective, I have experienced that time seemed to, well, stand still is not a word, but apparently go very, 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 very slowly. So that you have the impression that, whoa, this has been a long, intensive session. No, it wasn't. It was half an hour. Seriously, how did we do that? Well, I don't have the answer to that, but I have experienced that it is possible, even with a very limited time slot, to trigger things, to build this co-creative dance in such a way that patience is actually a very natural process, because one actually lives an experience that there is more than enough time, while actually just half an hour. Now, I don't know if I'm making any sense here, but that is what I lived already quite a few times while coaching or while being coached.
Yeah, making more than usual sense, Karl. So that's that I definitely appreciate it. Mel, how about you? What would you add?
Yeah, I love that. I was just going into a different zone when Karl was sharing about that that whole appreciation of the person in front, instead of just focusing on the task at hand. To me, it's the word for me is how much are you authentically caring for the person. That to me relates to the patience, because as a coach, I could be, yeah, I could do everything what we shared about today, but if I'm rushing that process, I would seemingly give away that I am just going to brush off his need, her need for that space to say what they really want in that time that is given. And that links to how much I actually care to listen deeply or not. One of the things I realize is consistently true is every person that I work with realizes that other people around them don't seem to really listen to them.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
Sorry,
Did you hear
I couldn't resist. I couldn't resist, Mel.
I know, Jonathan. It's that, it's like, wow, you really want to listen to me? It's like, what? And it's the opposite. I really think that this whole coaching thing that we all do is so counterintuitive to the what they experience, whoever that they is, your client, that they're like, oh my gosh, and I've said this before, it's like I've just come back from a spa, my mind spa, you know. You've given me this space so that I can rest and rejuvenate and all that wonderful R words. And they appreciate that. And I think that's all linked to that bit of that patience and that whatever, you know, that space that as we really celebrate them being who they can be and who they really want to be without quickly interrupting them and their thoughts with everything that we are, from our questions to whatever that we want to respond. It's like, I hear you, I get you, I understand you. I mean, whatever you say in between that interrupts sometimes the flow of where they want to that patience.
I have a question to build on this and to everybody here, right? And there's no one right or wrong answer. Suppose you work with a client and let's say towards some loosely defined outcomes. You both know you want it. And at the end of your work together, say 10 months, 12 months, whatever be the period, the specific outcome is not accomplished. Okay. A year down the line, that outcome with absolutely no coaching relationship gets accomplished. And this is not a hypothetical case. This has happened with me in an executive coaching engagement about a year and a half back. And I got a message actually thanking the work of coaching and what we created together to be an important factor in this outcome. That to me is patience. I won't say it's my patience or my client's patience, but that's patience at play, I would think. And initially, I felt a bit of an imposter saying, why am I even taking, or, you know, why am I even being acknowledged for this? But the truth is, most outcomes of coaching or most such things that happen at their own pace.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter at what point, or it doesn't matter in what way you have actually contributed to it. So I think that was a very, you know, it was a refreshing way for me to look at being patient with not just the client, but with my own self. So it's like planting those seeds, you know. Some plants, however much you water them, however much you tend, are not going to bear fruit, probably even in your lifetime.
Wow.
But they will. And you need to ask yourself, did it matter that you planted the seed? Or did it matter that somebody planted the seed and you watered it? So for me, that's the notion of patience that I think both client and coach must be aware of.
Love it.
Not, of course, to take credit for all the good things in the world, but I think also to recognize that you need to be patient.
Yeah.
So would invite all of you to think about, would you give yourself that credit, or would you just say thank you, or would you feel I had nothing to do with this?
I find that I am much more patient. I am dramatically more patient when I have some contact with my client in between sessions.
Yeah.
And I have really, I used to send a lot of, well, this wasn't the intent, but this is how they were received. I used to send a lot of correspondence in between sessions around, you know, how you doing on what you committed to in the session? it was basically shame-based accountability, not helpful at all. And I noticed over time I would get responses early in an engagement, but after about the 1/3 mark, I didn't hear back very often anymore. Then I changed my question into, what are you realizing about yourself? How are you thinking through? How is your perception of yourself changing? How's your perception of your situation changing? And that presents for me as a shift in patience. But for the client, it presents as, you know what, he's actually paying attention. It's an exercise in presence, not patience. Well, which I think are related, by the way. Patience and presence.
Yeah.
So we're nearing the end of this session. We've got about 15 minutes left. So let me change the topic just a little bit. How is the coaching landscape shifting? What's the biggest opportunity in front of you, to your eyes? What's the biggest challenge in front of you? What do you think?
Open question, Jonathan. Everybody, or
Sure. You can start though if you want, Mel.
no.
All right, I'll just say it.
I'll let Karl do.
I'll just say it because I suspect lots of people are thinking this right now. I'll just say to you flat out: AI, good thing, bad thing.
Old question now, Jonathan.
Yeah, I know it. But no, what's the biggest opportunity in front of the coaching world right now? Go ahead, Karl.
I think appetite.
Say more. Say more, Vijay.
So I think there's this, if I may loosely use the word, there's this hunger. There's this hunger to make things better across populations, across generation. I think there's this hunger to live a better life. Everybody wants that. And I'm seeing that more post-pandemic years than probably ever before. Probably technology and the fact that everything today is available at the click of a button, right? Everything, advice, perspective, anything. I don't even do where I live. I rarely visit a departmental store. Yeah, I mean, everything is available. So the point I'm trying to say is, which means that today people are willing to aspire. Where and how coaching fits into this aspiration, I'm not sure. Okay. But I think that's the place that needs to be found, rather than creating a new product. Hey, you know what? You should try coaching. You should work with a coach. Every human being needs a coach. I wouldn't take that line anymore. I will say that in your life plans, there's a place for you to work with somebody called a coach who can get to your aspirations faster, or who can get to your aspirations with more patience. So I think we need to find those points of fit in, but I think there are many such points today in today's world, which is why you can find a fit in on the health and well-being journey of a person. You can find a fit in into relationships. You can fit into a quicker career, quicker retirement, faster promotions. There's a lot of spirituality. I think there are lots of places where you can plug this in. What we need to find is, rather than saying, hey, I'm not going to be a plug in, I want to be like an independent point in myself. I think that's where coaches would benefit a lot from shifting their own way of looking at what they bring into the table. Can we solve more real world problems? That's my favorite sort of inspiration, that wherever I am, whatever I'm doing, I'm thinking of. Can I really help with that in the client's life and the world outside?
Love it. Love it. All right, Karl, spotlight's on you.
I think I'm on a slightly different planet to a certain extent than Vijay. Before I became independent coach, I have been human resources manager in a few organizations. And two sentences that I heard all the time, and apparently those still being human resources managers today still heard those two things. Yes, the human resources function should become much more strategic than it is now. Okay, right. And then the second thing that I heard, oh, well, yes, well, we are thinking about making the human resources functions redundant, because if we think that we can empower and make the line managers skilled enough in people, well, then we don't need human resources anymore. So firstly, by all urgence, become much more strategic, or you're going to lose your seat at the board table. Secondly, now we are perfectly capable to make you redundant. Okay, well, when I look at those two things and I bring them to coaching, I think that what mainstream, the average coach misses is what I would call economic and business acumen. That is what I hear a lot. And I'm not saying that I'm brilliant at that, far from that, because I'm not an economist. But I think that if coaches want to stay in the market, want to stay relevant, it is not so much the fight against AI or the fight with AI that they need to win or lose, but it is more the fight against themselves that they need to win or lose. And I think that, well, if AI is not managing to make us relevant in the upcoming 10 years, we will manage ourselves to do that. Unless we become much more, I think, certainly from the perspective of an executive coach, such as I am, unless we become much more business focused and having much more business acumen. And I mean with that, not necessarily staying focused on, I can bring you the solution that you want, or what kind of solutions will we as coaches bring in 10 years. I don't think we bring solutions as coaches. We guide clients to solutions in the best case. But in what way do we manage to speak the language of the client, in my case, often business leaders, so that the coaching process, of the need for the coaching process, arises or merges itself without necessarily talking about coaching? The best sales conversation, if you want to call them that way, are conversations where I talk for about an hour about business and strategy and all the things that matter in the market. I build trust by exploring those things. And then the last 5 minutes, the client says himself, by the way, Karl, can you make me an offer, because I want you as a coach? Okay, that's interesting. We didn't talk about coaching. We didn't even talk about the needs of that client. We talked about totally different stuff. I'll stop here.
That's good. Definitely appreciate that, Karl. Mel, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I think that the only way that coaching can make an impact in now and to the future is that coaching can actually become a lifestyle. So that's the big word that I'm opening myself to. The lifestyle means that it is in everyday speak, that we can we don't have to use the word coaching anymore. You know, I really hope and wish that we don't have to frame everything in the language of coaching. So I am in some ways agreeing with what Vijay has said, and even in what Karl has said, because at the end of the day, the languaging has to be relevant to what the client is all about. And that's, I guess, why we're talking about it, all of this today. It's coming back to who's in front of the mirror. yes, the importance of that leverage. Yes, it's important of who we need to show up as, because we need to build the trust, right? So our background's important. I don't believe our background's not important. I think whatever experience that you've come through, you've got that ability to connect with people because you've got that bit of what you have in the past, whatever it is, even insecurities. So I think that bit of seeing coaching as something that more people can do with one another, having that caring conversations with one another. I would love to see coaching reach that heights of where, yeah, it go down to every nation in the world can be able to do it. It's not becoming more and more exclusive, but it's more and more inclusive for me. Thank you, Jonathan.
You bet.
Over to you.
I'm going to go completely different direction. Is I think as we get more and better data about what actually works in coaching, I think we're going to learn that some of the things that we have clung to as coaches over the last 15 to 20 years actually aren't helpful at all for clients. I don't know what they are, but I suspect we're going to discover that there's a different skill set that actually has a higher likelihood of producing meaningful outcomes for clients. And we're going to have to re-educate ourselves. We're going to have to retool ourselves. So I think the big opportunity for us as coaches right now is to really recommit to focusing on our clients and what our clients are looking for, and doing more of the things that help those clients get those outcomes, even if they're not the traditional coaching behavior. I think we have an opportunity to give ourselves permission to venture out of the box a little bit. And to me, that's what International Coaching Week is really all about. It's giving ourselves permission to venture out of the box a little bit.
Nice.
All right. In our last couple of minutes here.
Jonathan, I want to add on saying, prompted by what you said, I'd like to take more risks. Call that a statement of intent here in a close-knit group, or just feeling inspired. But I think I've started doing that. And things that I believed were more default, second nature. I'm really trying to see what happens if I don't go with that. Adapt myself, learn a lot more, try to, and it's interesting, right? As you get more and more experienced with this craft, doing this stuff, it's just natural, right? You tend to get quite confident about, and especially if it's got you success to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
You think that's a great way. Why rock the boat? But I think personally also to stay relevant, and I think to stay energized in this profession in the long run, I think it's important to reinvent ourselves, to take those risks, take calculated risks, but take them nonetheless. Try new things, have a little bit of fun as well. So those are things that I'm thinking of just listening to you.
Love it. Love it. In our last 2 minutes here.
I think there's a question from Moshmi, and one of you may want to take that.
Okay.
Which I think is about, few leaders consider coaching as performance improvement plan. How to shift their mindset. Maybe Karl, or I don't know. Karl, you want to take it because you work with a lot of business leaders?
I'm not sure if shifting anything is there the right word. What I do believe is that many business leaders are working in a far from perfect world. Well, all of us, but Certainly the way these days with what's happening in the world, business leaders go through tough times, full of complexity, full of disruption, full of change. What I notice is that the higher you go in organizations, the more lonely they become. This is the kind of leaders that have at least 20 small meetings every day where other colleagues come and tell them, yes, Karl, I wanted to share that with you, but please keep this between you and me. But they have 20 of those. And after a day filled with those kind of but keep it between you and me conversation, it's becoming a burden. Your head is full of confidential information. And the worst thing is, you as a CEO cannot do that with the others. No, that's one-way traffic. So I'm not sure if any coaching journey so far has really caused deep shifts in terms of leadership awareness. But I am sure that it is a human helping another human in surviving and navigating complexity, in not drowning into a tsunami or an ocean of confidentialities, in finding a caring heart in a very lonely position. That is what I often hear as feedback. You have no idea, Karl, how simply a discussion with you of 2 hours is helping me of finding some calm, peace, and balance again. But that is something entirely different than, now I have become more coach myself, or now I'm capable to develop a new strategy, or now I'm capable to inspire my colleagues with a new challenge. Those are luxury side effects. The main thing is focus on the individual and what they need. And that is often the kind of thing that I shared with you now. I don't know if that's an answer, but it's the best I can find at the moment.
That's good.
I'm going to push on that as this will be the last thing I say, and then I'll give the three of you a chance to say goodbye because we're running out of time here. My experience has been that almost all managers think of coaching as a performance improvement plan. And the reality is the depth of the issue is not always fully understood. The depth of the situation is not always fully understood. So I would throw out to you that the opportunity in front of us is to say, how can we do even better at understanding all the nuance of the issue? And if performance improvement is the solution, run with that. But it's not. I would love to have more stakeholders see coaching as a Swiss Army knife with a whole bunch of different tools to it, a whole bunch of different strategies to it. And performance improvement is one of them. Let's make sure we really understand what's at stake. So that's my final word. Mel, what would be yours? And we're going to go, by the way, 3 sentences.
All right. Don't take yourself so seriously. Relax.
Right.
Smile. Have fun. Enjoy the session yourself as well. I mean, it's going to be painful. You're going to sit there trying to do all of the above and you not enjoying yourself. So,
yeah.
Find a place. Find that place for yourself, whatever it is. And,
love it.
And you'll find yourself too along the way.
Love it.
Thanks, guys.
Karl?
I'll be very short. Thank you, dear friends, for having stayed with us for the full 90 minutes and for not having run away halfway. It could have happened, but you did not. Thank you.
And Vijay, you get the final word.
Yeah, no, just very happy to have co-created this with everyone. And like Karl said, I think it was just not the four of us in conversation. And, all of the comments, I think the chip-ins, just the challenges building on each other. I couldn't have asked for a more perfect start for ICW. And on that note, cheers to coaching. That's what I would say. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Happy ICW, everyone.
Thank you all for being here. Have a great International Coaching Week, and we'll probably see you next year. If not
I'm
sometime
doing
soon.
I'm gonna do the Asian thing. Are we not gonna take a photo?
Oh,
Hey.
That's a
all
good thing.
right. All right.
Hey.
Okay.
So if you are in a situation where you can turn on your camera, we would appreciate that.
Who's gonna take
I
a
think we
photo?
lost a few
Come on.
people.
Ooh.
I can get it.
To
Okay.
honor Mel and his heritage, we're going to take a photo. So if you wouldn't mind joining us video wise. All right. 3, 2, and 1. Oh, hang on, one more. 3, 2, 1. All
I
right.
think we got an alternate profession. If you all stop coaching, you could go on a world tour with a comedy show. Not bad at all.
All right, we'll take
Thank
it.
you, Robin. We'll take you on that.
We'll take it. We'll be playing a series of venues around the world. Expected attendance 12 to 16 folks in each location. So, thank you all very much. Have a
Thank
great
you, everyone.
So
International
much.
Coaching
Thank
Week.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.